Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics. These two amazing quilts were designed with a collection called Calypso II by In the Beginning Fabrics. Jason Yenter is the design powerhouse really at In the Beginning Fabrics, and his designs are just amazing. I wish you were here to see how vibrant these fabrics are. You can see them here in the box. They're just, each one is just more special than the next. So I love, when we saw the panels, we said, let's do a panel quilt. So what you're looking at is simpler than it looks. This part right here, all the way up to here, is a panel. And I'm going to show you how to fussy cut a panel. And then this part down here, we're going to also what's called fussy cut a border print. And that's all you're doing. You're just going to be putting that together. And we're going to do something in the corners called mitering. That may be new to you. We're going to go over that. So with the two quilts, of course, you've got the blue over here, kind of more of that teal over on this side. You have some beautiful backing options. If you do pick up these quilts, be sure to grab that backing. Obviously, there's nothing quite like these fabrics to coordinate with the top of your quilt. So let's put that aside. When you get your kit, we've got some instructions, of course, walking you through that, but my job today is to help unpack that. And so if you've ever thought, I would love to add a nautical theme to a room, maybe a child's room, maybe your favorite room in your own house, maybe you live by the ocean or wish you lived by the ocean, these might be a great addition. So when you get your kit, you will have a panel, whether it's the blue or the teal, and our instructions are going to talk you through fussy cutting. And notice how we started fussy cutting our panel, but I wanted to show you, we've got half of it done. I want to do the other half with you so that you know how to approach a project like this. So with really any time you're going to be working with a panel, you always want to press things out nice and even. And you can see we kind of had that folded up, ready for our video prep. And you want to get a really fresh blade in your rotary cutter and a lot of space. You want to get as long of a cut as you can each time. So I'm going to move just a few things out of my way. And our instructions right away will have you trimming 2 1/4 inches away from this kind of boundary line here. That's where I'm always like, what's my favorite ruler that's going to help me get that exact 2 1/4, the longest stretch that I can, and a nice big working surface. So my go-to ruler that seemed very obvious to me was my 2 1/2 inch ruler. If you don't have this one at home, your 6 or 6 1/2 is a great option for you. But if you like to cut maybe your own jelly roll strips, this is a great one to grab. The reason I love that, obviously it's not 2 1/4, it's 2 1/2. But on this ruler, and maybe you can see this as I put this paper here, you see this black dash line? I know that's a 1/4 inch. And if I lay that line onto my dark blue kind of boundary, like actually this way, let me flip that around. Sorry, doing a little gymnastics with that. Do you see how that is? It's just beautiful. Now, I don't know if I've ever seen a panel that's perfectly printed. Sometimes just, maybe it's perfectly printed, but through the process of drying and rolling the fabric on the bolt, it might have just distorted a little bit. It's okay to be the boss of your fabric and block your panel, press it, kind of stretch it where you need it to be. So just know that sometimes you can't just do one big old cut. You have to finesse that a little bit, and that's kind of the nature of working with panels. So I'm going to lay that 1/4 inch line. You can see we've already made that cut, and now I draw the panel toward me. without it falling off the table here. And let's try to pick that up. When you have to shift a ruler, I always like to, I'm not going to just start here. I want to just reestablish, where is my line headed? Where is this moving? Do you see how that panel has now, see how me pull it now? Hopefully the overhead could capture that. Let me do that again. Do you see how my dark line kind of does this little bit of a turn? That's more of probably me. Maybe when I pressed it out, maybe I distorted that. But now that we're here, I'm going to lay my 1/4 inch down where I've already cut. And if I have to bring this over just slightly so that that dashed line travels right on that dark navy, then let's do that. And we're going to make our next cut. Okay, all the way to the end. I think I need a fresh blade in my rotary cutter. I can see that. And that is definitely something I will do after this video is done with you. All right, we use our tools here. We have to change the blades a lot. Okay, same thing, right? This side of that, this side of the panel, we'll lay that down there. And I'm gonna cut as far as I can before I see the panel start to deviate. In that instance, it looks like about right here. And now I need to move my panel downward. You see that? Now it comes right in line and I can continue cutting. So that's how you, again, we need to get that blade changed. I can see I maybe have a nick. If that ever happens to you and you see that same, great teaching point. I have nicked my blade with pins when I was trimming something and maybe there was a pin on the table and I didn't realize it. The easiest way to know if you have, is it a dull blade or a nicked blade, is if you have where it doesn't cut through on the same interval, that's a nicked blade. That's how you always know if it's just something that we've learned along the way. Anyway, you're going to trim up your panel to 2 1/4 all the way around. Now, with your border print, it's just a little bit of a different cut, and we'll talk you through that one. Let me clean that up. We'll put this here. On this one, we'll be switching to a different ruler. That's going to be the 6 1/2, and this is just a smaller piece of the border. Obviously, your border would be a lot longer here. But our instructions talk you through right here where we're going to measure a 1/4 inch below our waves. So if we turn our panel here, so if we look at this, notice our waves are at the bottom. So I want you to kind of visualize this. So what we're trying to do, we don't want to cut off our waves. So we're going to start with our panel and we're going to grab our 6 1/2 inch ruler now, because ultimately the strip we're cutting is going to be 6 1/2. So this is very handy to use this. So our step 1 in our instructions is measure a 1/4 inch below kind of our wave line. So again, I'm laying that 1/4 inch, moving my fabric, finessing this as I need to. Boy, I want that fresh blade right now and my rotary cutter so I don't have any more skipped cuts. I'll just push a little harder. Hopefully that'll compensate for that. That's another clue you need to change your blade. You're having to push harder, right, to get a good clean cut. You've probably all been there and experienced that. So that's our first cut. That's what we're talking about here. Then we talk about the second cut. Well, the fact that our ruler is 6 1/2 means simply turn this around. The footprint of this is 6 1/2. So now all I need to do is lay this along the edge that I just cut and go all the way to the end. That's how you will prepare your 4 strips that are going to be ultimately your outer borders. Because we wanted that to have a really nice miter in the corner, that's the next thing I want to talk you through here. You know, one of the things Bethany mentioned, she's on our team here, that is really fun about this is if you study this panel, you know, you've got the treasure, you've got the sunken ship, you've got the kind of the compass back there. It's a really fun kind of I Spy. You know, you've got this anchor, you've got the pearl inside there. So, you know, I think things we can do with our family and friends that are, you know, not electronic. I'm always all about that. And so that's a nice, I love that she brought that up. So once your panels are cut, how do we do this miter? What is this miter business about? So what Bethany prepared for me, and I'll share with you, is it was easier for her, and it'll be easier for me to demonstrate. This is going to be the center of our quilt, right? It's easier for you to just see a black piece of fabric so that we can study how we put these borders on. So let's look at the back of this. This is your quilt middle. And now you have just sewn a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You just laid your borders on. Obviously the waves are going to the outside. And you want to stop a 1/4 inch away from the end. So you can, hopefully you can see that. And now you're just going to pin that, kind of get it out of the way. When I do a miter, the first side's no problem. There's nothing here to interfere with. But once that's done, I'm going to pin this out of the way because now you sew all 4 borders on. Normally with a quilt, as you know, you sew 1 border on, you sew the other border on, and if you need to trim, you trim, and then the other borders come on. This isn't like that. With a miter, you for sure need to put the 2 sides on to be able to do the miter. So once this is on, get it out of the way, however you want to do that. And now comes the next border. Again, this started off right side together, but you're always going to start a 1/4 inch away from the start, and you're going to stop a 1/4 inch away from the very end. So you create this gap here. What that does for you, as we look at this here, is you can see this is, you're going to create a 45. You're like, how do I connect this? All you need to do is stack 1 border strip on top of the other. That very accurate fussy cutting that you did of your border strips is really now going to come into play. And these are stacked exactly on top of each other. So let me just roll one of these back. You can see how this just kind of keeps visually continuing. Well, once you have them stacked, you've got your 90 degree and you have this 45. This is now, see this little point here, this little flap? Let that go ahead and come back. You're going to lay this together. We will get our ruler. And I'm not going to just start up here. I'm going to let most of my ruler lay on top of the main part of my quilt, so I am certain that I'm going in the right trajectory. Because if I'm just up here, I don't really know that. You must bring it back to validate, because you can see this is incrementally a different angle, but it's significant enough that it will not yield the right miter if you don't have the right angle. It's supposed to be 45. So once that's done, we are going to draw this line. We're going to sew this one together, by the way. I'm going to get my iron heating up all the way to max. And I'm going to want to start sewing this from this point out, not this point in. You will not start sewing from this edge. You're going to start sewing right there. That's key. I'm just going to actually iron that. I don't want you to even see that. I kind of just extended that line. But let's just iron that away so you're not even looking at that. Okay? You're going to start sewing where you had basically left off. So let's pin that really well. We don't want anything to shift as we head over to our sewing machine. If this is awkward for you to start on this side, you could flip it over, right? It doesn't really matter, but we just do want to start from here out. That we know for certain. Pin, pin. Now, miters, I have missed many miters in my life, and I've seam ripped a bunch. So if you don't get it on the first shot, that's okay. Maybe this is the first time you've ever mitered anything. And if you don't get it, don't worry. Seam rip, we won't trim anything. We're going to check our work, see if we're happy, and then if we are, only then will we trim. So let's head over to that machine. I am going to want to reinforce where I begin because there will be some tension there. Let me get that ruler out of the way and try to clean up. By the way, if you ever are making a quilt and you have maybe an inner border and outer border and they're both mitered, sew the inner border to the outer border first and then miter them as a unit. I remember I did a quilt like that and I put the inner border on and mitered it, and I put the outer border on and mitered it. I thought, that wasn't smart. I could have just sewn the inner border to the outer border and now treated it as one unit, and my borders would have come out, my miters would have come out better. So let's look. What we're looking for is that we truly did hit that nice 90 degrees, and that right here, let me show that to you better. Let me open this up so it's lying as flat as it could be. What we're looking for is that those two pieces meet exactly, and they're not offset, and they meet there again. Once you've achieved that and you're happy with what you're seeing, then and only then do I take that to my cutting mat, and you want to be careful you're not cut. I've done that one. I've done most of these things where you're not accidentally trimming off anything that's down here. We're just trying to trim off the border that we no longer need. Once you have that, you will want to press that seam open. For that reason, some people like to do miters with shorter stitch lengths because that seam will be pressed open. I think I'll even press these out to the outside as well. See how that just wants to go that way? That's fine. I'll go with that. I've repressed many a blocks when it becomes very apparent that a seam wants to go a certain direction. I'm like, okay, I won't battle that. Let's press that. And then let's look at our finished product here. Let's look at our miter. Look how pretty that is. Oh, that little thread there. I'm going to press it from this side too. And there we go. We have a miter corner. And you'll just obviously do the same thing in all the corners and then bind your quilt as normal. Binding, of course, is included in your kit. So Calypso II, you know, when we saw the collection, we just, that color impact was like, wow. And so this is definitely one to grab that kit. Be sure to grab that coordinating backing, limited quantities of both of those. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do that. So much more coming your way from maybe myself, Bethany, or other team members coming up soon that you'll be seeing here on the Shabby Fabrics channel. I'll see you soon on another Shabby Fabrics video.